living in the year 2016 is you don't even need me. I don't even need you here most days. Okay, that's awesome. So, if you didn't turn it in by yesterday, late afternoon, early evening, I sent you an email, said, hey, you hadn't turned in your Nazi war crimes assignment from the Nuremberg trials. Here's a video of class because some of you are gone. Some of you I wasn't here to tell you. You did it on your own. If you turned it in, I graded it. I put it in yesterday. If you did not turn it in, it's just empty in the grade book. I did not put an NHI in because I didn't have time to grade some of yours late last night that were on time. But those will be NHIs by midnight tonight. Whenever I get a chance to grade, I'll catch up. So I didn't put any zeros in. So I'm telling you, you better get that done as the one thing you had from last week. If you have questions, I emailed you a video of class from 5th period. And I gave you a link to that assignment. Okay? So, what's going on this week? If you scroll down, there's a bunch of stuff on our homepage. Scroll down to the calendar and let's talk about that real quick. This week we're going to start the Cold War. Now, my goal as your U.S. history teacher is to get to tomorrow. That's the point in history we're going to get to. What's next for our country? So we're not going to say, like, let's get to Vietnam, or let's get to the first Gulf War, or the Iraq War in 2003. No, we want to get to tomorrow. So we're skipping and cruising along. The next 2 weeks, we still have ACT prep if you look at my calendar. So here's what that means. We're basically down 90 minutes a week. Can't do anything about that, so we're not going to complain. So we got to be on point and get our stuff done and clip along so we can get to what we need to get to. Both weeks are going to be about the Cold War. This week's going to be about how the Cold War originated, and the big question is how do we get to be adversaries or rivals with the Soviet Union? And on Friday, the question you're going to seek to answer is, could we have avoided that rivalry? Could this whole Cold War thing have never happened? You just have to have good reasons why it was avoidable or why it was inevitable. Okay? So today, we're going to read about how the Cold War started, and I'm going to put you into a team. Your team is going to advise the U.S. president, who at the start of the Cold War is still Harry S. Truman, how do we handle these Soviets that are our rivals? So some of the questions that will come up. Nuclear proliferation, one of the most important questions of our day today in 2016. Who gets nukes? Because guess what, in 1945, how many countries have nuclear weapons? This guy, the United States, and only the United States, but that won't last. So, who do we want to have nukes, or what do we do with ours? How do we rebuild these European countries who've been devastated, in part because of our bombing, and how do we handle the Soviets? So you're going to advise the president on that. Today is going to be getting in your team, reading, and introducing. Tomorrow you're going to say, Mr. President, here's what we should do with nuclear proliferation. The United States should destroy all its nuclear weapons, promise to never build more, and get everyone else to agree. Or anyone who tries to build a nuke, let's bomb them and keep them from getting one so we're the only guys in the world with nuclear weapons. Okay, so it'll be fun. On Friday, what you're going to do with a sub, because I will not be here, Miss Brabazon's going to come teach class, which is awesome because she's the best. That's why I was asked for her. Is you're going to look at the question, could we have avoided all of this? Good question. But you'll be able to answer that by Friday. I will not be here. The assignment's on the calendar. It's in Canvas. Okay? So, you don't need me here. If you have questions Friday, you can email me. All right? So, here's what we're going to start with. We're going to go into Canvas. On the home page, if you're curious, during ACT prep, Tim Heber, he's in 5th period U.S. history. He's already graduated from high school, so he doesn't need ACT prep. If anything, he could teach it to us. He doesn't need to study it. So I gave him the swivel last week, and he went across the way, and I said, I want you to come up with an original video that you write out what you're going to say and talk about how you learned about World War II in Germany. Because do you think they get a little different perspective than us? Yeah, they're the bad guys in the story that we say. It's very black and white. Good guys, bad guys. And he talks about how every high school student in Germany is required to go visit a concentration camp. And he talks about what that is like. It's really, really interesting. It has almost as many views as any YouTube video I've put up, and I haven't sent it to anybody yet. So it should play. I embedded it right here on the home page. Tim Heber explains Nazism and the refugee crisis. On your own time, you can watch that. I watched it last night. It's really insightful and interesting to hear his perspective. I didn't tell him what to say. I said, here's a camera. Make a video. Say what you want to say. That's what he wanted Jew American students to hear. So sometime you want to watch it, I put it right on the home page for you. Okay, we're going to go to modules to start with. And there's two things in the most recent module there at the bottom, because World War II is officially over now that Nazi war criminals have been put on trial, if you were here Friday. So the next module should say the Cold War. And there's two things that you can see. The first one says Origins of the Cold War, Foreign Policy Advisors. Open that bad boy up. I thought, what better way to get your attention on a Monday morning than nuclear warheads? So, if you are not familiar with nuclear proliferation, into the 1950s, no one had nukes but us. Okay? The Soviets, they're the Russians, said, okay, if the Americans can build those atomic bombs, our scientists and physicists, they can find a way too. And throughout the Cold War, you can tell at first, they're way behind our nuclear stockpile, but into the 70s and 80s, they were cranking out nuclear warheads at a way faster rate than we ever did. To this day, the Russians have far more nuclear weapons than we do. Now, here's the good news. Since the Cold War ended in 1991, both of us have been reducing our nuclear stockpiles. Okay? If you look at the tip of this Soviet graph, which is like 88, 89, late 80s, if you didn't know this, take all the nuclear warheads on Earth, ours and the Soviets, and the British had a few, the Chinese, okay? If you set all of those off on planet Earth at the same time, the destructive force of the world's nuclear stockpile is equivalent to covering the surface of the Earth, including all the oceans, 9 times over. So at the height of the Cold War, if a nuclear war was started, there was enough nuclear energy in these warheads to destroy every inch, North Pole, the Pacific Ocean, every inch of the surface of the Earth, 9 times over. That is a scary thought, isn't it? Okay. Now, luckily, we're here and alive and not irradiated mutants like your video game. So it didn't happen, but it's pretty dang close. Okay. Here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to put you in a group. You're going to advise the president on how to handle this rivalry with the Soviet Union. That's all the Cold War is. So we're going to do groups of 3. I'm going to try some mental math. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Perfect. 6 groups of 3. So listen to me when I give you your number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I need you to find your 2 partners and make a little triangle with your desk anywhere you want to go. Go. Anywhere you want to go with your partners. Yes. The statewide one. It's mid-April 20th. Just throwing it out there. It's on the school calendar. You still have like a month and a half, I'd say. Anywhere you want to go. Group of 3. Every group should have 3 people. What number are you guys? 6. Okay, good. Did my best to not put Hatcher, Bentley, or Sambrano with you. Glad that effort succeeded. Okay, now that we're all good on where we are, all you're going to need today is your laptop. There's a link in the instructions here. 1 person in your group shall be in charge of opening that Google Doc, making a copy, and giving your 2 partners access to edit. So one of you do that in your group. Figure out who that is and go. Somebody be a leader and take some initiative. You on that, Bentley?
Yeah.
I can't understand your mumbling.
Yeah, I guess.
It's a yes or no question. You're either on it or you're not.
No, I am.
Okay. Make a copy of it. Should look like my screen. Give your partners access to edit. You'll see like a mushroom cloud and a map of the Iron Curtain. You'll know you're in the right spot. Okay?
It's on a Tuesday.
Yep.
That's weird. That's
The state of Wyoming dictates that to us. So we just say, Roger that, and we do it.
So like when the freshmen take the plan or whatever.
We all do it the same day.
Is it always on a Tuesday?
I don't know that it's always on a Tuesday, but it seems to be on a Tuesday often. Our thought as a school is, if you guys all have to do that, Hatcher, pretend to be mature. You don't have to be mature, just pretend.
I'm just talented.
Our thought process is, if you guys are all going to be testing, let's just have everybody test the same day.
Right. That makes sense.
When you get that document from your partner, open it up. You'll see a mushroom cloud in the top left corner. Okay? You should get an email that says, whoever took that job shared this document with you. Make sure you have access to edit. Did you get that going to them?
Yeah.
Okay, get with the program. Let's go. You can do that later. You should have an email that says Bentley shared it with you. Okay, once you have that, close your laptop lid halfway so I know you have that from your partner. When you get that Google Doc from your partner, close your laptop lid halfway. Dankelman, you with us? It's one of life's yes or no questions. Okay, can you hit that left light switch for me, please? Okay. Most of you have that or it's coming along. I have a question for you. Eyes and ears up here. With your group, I want you to discuss this. So here's the scenario. You come into the school cafeteria at lunch and there's a fight between two students as you walk in there. Please let me finish. One of them is a classmate who's recovering from a sports injury. So they got one of those walking boots on and they broke their foot. Okay? The other one, a friend of yours that you no longer trust, is way bigger and more mean than the person with the boot on their foot. They're fighting. Okay? And you think your friend, the big mean one in this situation, is kind of being the punk and the bully in this scenario. So let me give you some options before you say what you would do. Okay? Here's option one. Do not get involved and walk away. Let me give you all the options before you tell me what to do. Option two, go get some of your friends and then you approach them together and say, all right, stop guys, let's solve this with nonviolent means. If you were so inclined, I'm sure you could. Okay? Option three is jump in and defend your classmate with the boot on their foot against the big mean friend you no longer trust. Or option four, attack your big mean friend. Jump in and start pounding on them to show them you don't tolerate them picking on kids with boots on their foot. Like basically he's the big mean friend, he or she, picking on the little one who's like already injured. Okay? As a group, here are your four choices. I need you three, there's a divider here. I need you three to come to a consensus of what you would do. So discuss those and see where you're all at now, and then how can we come to a consensus where we all three agree which of those four options is best? Questions? What do you want? Pull out a gun and shoot him or something? We're at school. That's against the law. Oh, you're so mean. You can beat up both of them. Could you hit the left light switch, please? Thank you. You need to come to a consensus. Okay, what do you vote we do? There's your options.
Beat the crap out of them.
The big mean bully?
Yeah.
So you want option 3? Or you want option 4?
4.
Okay, what do you want to do?
Well, I want to attack the bully.
So you want option 4 too. What do you want?
Well,
Consensus means you all three agree. What do you want to do?
I don't really know yet.
Well, I can't help you if you don't know.
so you're gonna help over Curtis.
No.
Do we all agree that option 1 is not a good option? Do you have a question or a statement, Mr. Tatum? Is it imperative you get one right now? Then hustle. You know where they are?
How is 3 any different?
Yes? Okay, defending the little guy is very different than jumping on the big guy's back and start punching him and gouging his eyes out. Attacking the big guy is different than just defending the little guy with the boot.
But you're still going to be...
No, because if the big guy sees you say, stop, or you're going to start a fight with me, he might quit because you got in the way. Number 4 is jump on his back and start choking him, and pulling his hair and biting him. That's how AJ fights anyways. Okay, has anyone reached a consensus? Please vocalize your consensus. Why?
Because that's what we agreed on.
Why did you agree on it?
Because we would like to help a little kid.
Well, not just because we want to help the friend or the little kid, but prove a point that you don't put up with it.
Just because you're bigger than them doesn't.
Okay, did anyone else reach a consensus besides this group who agreed on number 4? Did you guys reach a consensus?
Yeah, we got 3.
You like number 3. Why'd you pick number 3 over number 4?
Because, like you would say, you're not doing any better attacking them when they're attacking them.
Are, whoa, are you like learning stuff from this class and starting to change your outlook on the world?
Not really.
I gotta tell you, did you guys hear what she said?
What?
I am so proud of you, Kim Tone. No, she said option 3. Listen, why did you guys agree on option 3? Really loud so they can hear. No, I'm serious.
That's what I'm trying to find my own.
Well, someone in your group, if you can't say it, someone, will you say that loud and proud for the rest of the class? Why option 3?
It's like trying to stop violence by fighting with violence. You can't. It's like hypocritical almost.
Okay, here's what we can agree on, common ground. Do you want the big bully friend of yours to stop picking on the injured guy? Do we all agree on that?
Yeah.
Now, we look at these options. Number 1, is that going to accomplish our goals?
No.
Option 2, maybe. But I agree, 3 or 4 is more prone. Either of those is more prone to stopping the violence than 1 or 2. Okay, here was their point. How can you say, hitting's wrong, stop picking on people, while you're punching him in the face?
I don't say picking on people is wrong. I'm just saying it's wrong to pick on somebody who's smaller than you.
Oh, so it's okay to fight someone who's as big as you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds reasonable.
So listen, I have to tell you this. Des, Mr. Hamilton, I have to tell you guys this. Yesterday, I had an in-depth, lengthy conversation with my wife about teaching 2-year-olds not to bite, a.k.a. my son. And we had this conversation, and I got to tell you this. Principal McKelkey told a story about me, and he said, when I was 2 years old, this lady came to our door, and I was excited to see her. And out of excitement, I latched on her inner thigh and, like, clamped down, and she whacked me and, like, sent me flying. And they said that back then, this was many moons ago, I won't date myself and give you a year, that here's what they were taught. When your kid bites, you grab them and you bite them really hard. And the thinking is then they'll go, oh, biting hurts, I won't do it. You can raise your kids however you want. Your parents raised you however they did. But here's the thing. If the kid's not old enough to comprehend, here's what you just did. You modeled a behavior for them. You did it, the person they copy, and said, now don't do that. To me, and this is just parenting my son, I think that's very hypocritical. Don't bite, and to show you how wrong biting is, I'm going to bite you.
Oh, yeah.
I choose not to use that philosophy. Now, God help us if you have kids. You can raise them how you want to. But I thought that was awesome because I said, we talk about this in U.S. history all the time. Okay? Here's what I would say. I want option 3 because I agree. We got to protect the little guy in the boot, but give the big guy a chance. You walk in front of the little guy. Say it's Corey. and say, listen, stop. If you throw one more punch at him, I'm tagging in, and it's not going to end well with you. What are you doing picking on some little skinny guy when you're the big, bad, tough dude? Okay? Because then there's a solution there that involves him stopping. Now, some of you say, but I want him to learn a lesson. So I'm just running in and punching him in the face, no questions asked. I don't disagree. Okay? But what does this have to do with the Cold War? The little guy with his boot on his foot is one of the defeated European powers. The big, mean, bad guy who used to be our friend that we kind of don't trust is the Soviet Union. When we met in Berlin, the Soviet army from the east, the Allied forces, the British and Americans from the west, some of our generals said, let's just keep going east, and while we're fighting this world war, let's just kill the Soviets too. Okay, guys like General Patton, who's one of the most famous American generals from World War II, he said, hey, we made it as far as Berlin, let's just keep going to Moscow. We'll take them out too. Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the British Empire, said, now that we defeated the Nazis, let's just take the Soviets down a notch too. We didn't do that, but here's what's scary. They're the biggest army in the world at the time, and we have atomic weapons. The potential for conflict is huge. Okay, so in that scenario, the Soviets are picking on little defeated European countries. They used to be our friends, but now we're going to start having some disagreements. Okay, so you're going to need to go to TCI. You are on point, Maggie. I like that about you.
Okay.
And this is going to be lesson number 38, I believe, Origins of the Cold War. Look at you reading the calendar.
Actually, no, it's on the top of that document.
Okay. Is it 38, Origins of the Cold War? Okay, the introduction. What you should see is a picture of some Soviet generals kind of chummy and shaking hands with an American, and then you see the hammer and sickle flag of the Soviet Union on your left. Okay? Here's the first thing to know. What the heck was the Cold War, and why do we call it that? Now, you guys have watched Rambo movies, and your parents grew up during the Cold War. I did. Okay? It ended when I was somewhat young. But I kind of grew up in the latter stages of the Cold War. Some of you probably play video games, watch movies, or read books about this time period. What the heck was the Cold War, and why do we call it that? Anybody have a simple answer for us? Okay, it's not because Russia's cold. Good guess, though. Okay. First, what is it? Here's how I define it. A rival between two dominant world superpowers. Who gets to be the top dog? Because undoubtedly, after World War II, Germany's in shambles. So is Japan. So is France. It's never going to be the dominant hegemonic power like it was under Napoleon. So who's the top dog in the world? Us or the Soviet Union? If you saw my little cartoon when you logged into Canvas, you got Uncle Sam sitting on one side of the globe with the blue. You got the big bad Russian bear with his claws out sitting in the red. It's a rivalry, just like us versus Pinedale, just like University of Wyoming versus Colorado State. The difference is it's a rivalry between the two dominant world superpowers, and they're both going to have lots of nuclear weapons. Why is it called the Cold War? We're never going to directly fight the Soviets. We're not going to shoot at them. They're not going to shoot at us. So why is it a war then? Well, we're going to fight proxy wars against each other. Okay, that concept is really simple. Let's say your beef is with Clara. She's the Soviet Union. You know if you come fight her toe-to-toe, you might lose, or it's going to be pretty ugly. So what you do is you give her little brother, Wyatt, some guns and some weapons and say, you fight her on my behalf. That's a proxy war. Get someone else to fight her so you don't have to confront her directly. And she goes, oh, well, I'm going to give your wife weapons and training and tell her to fight you. So instead of us fighting directly, we're supplying and training and instigating fights between you and someone else on our behalf. So we're never going to shoot at the Soviets, luckily. Okay, this week is about how did all of this start. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to read the introduction. Okay? And you don't have to do the thing at the bottom because we already discussed it. So, turn on the main ideas, which should be blue. And Des, could you read from that first small paragraph in the spring of 1945, please?
In spring 1945, World War II wound down in Europe. A historic encounter took place between the U.S. and Soviet troops in Germany. Up until that time, the Americans and the Soviets had been allies in the war, but had not actually fought together. Now the two forces prepared to meet as they moved into Germany, pressing on the Nazis and go to the west.
Mr. Hatcher, could you read the next paragraph, please?
As the U.S. Army advanced eastward, it sent small patrols ahead and enforced the search for Soviet troops. Lieutenant Albert L. Kotzebue, a 21-year-old officer from Texas, led one such patrol on April 25th. As his men approached the Elbe River near the German city of Targau, they spotted a Soviet patrol on the opposite bank. Shouting and waving their arms, they caught the Soviet soldiers' attention. The men on the other side screamed, Amerikansky, Amerikansky, pointing and waving back. Lieutenant Kotzebue found a small boat near the shore and made his way across the river. The Soviet and U.S. soldiers greeted each other warmly.
Okay, Clara, can you read the next paragraph, please?
Several such meetings took place along the way. Later, the senior commanders of the two armies exchanged more formal visits. Photographers recorded the historic occasion, capturing the image of aging guy and the Soviet soldiers shaking hands. Working together, the Allies would soon bring an end to the war in Europe. That would be the noted that the preparing quickly, for which all the American people, all the British people, and all the Soviet people had toiled and prayed so long. Furthermore, the friendly meetings on the Elbe suggested that an ongoing partnership between the United States and the Soviet Union was possible.
However, the days of U.S. and Soviet soldiers hugging and shaking hands, like the picture at the right, would not last. Before long, the United States and the Soviet Union would engage in a grim struggle for world power known as the Cold War. As one momentous global conflict ended, another was about to begin. The two countries would soon become bitter enemies. Now, little tiny bit of history here. You guys think back to World War I. When we tagged in with the Allied powers in World War I, what had just happened to one of their big allies before we joined in? Who was in a civil war and a revolution? Russia. Now, here's the thing. When we say Soviet Union, it's still that country that you think of as Russia. Okay? A bunch of drunk guys wearing fur hats, and it's really cold and snowy and huge. It's still Russia. But they have a different government, and they are communist. So they call themselves the Soviet Union or the USSR. Okay? That hammer and sickle is their little logo on their flag. The guy who started that revolution is the guy featured on my bottle. It is not a lemonade. It's a Lenin-aid. Vladimir Lenin is the guy who brought that contagious ideology into the Soviet Union in 1916. The Germans planted him in there. Remember our analogy, burn down your neighbor's apartment? Well, that's dangerous because it might come back to get you. He's going to get the Soviet Union out of the war, have a revolution, they execute their czar or king, and after a lot of conflict, they adopt the Soviet style of governing, which we call communist. Now, why are we their friends during World War II? Indirectly. You guys have all heard this saying before. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay? You really can't stand Luke, and neither can Kyle. You two may not have a lot in common and be best friends, but your unified hatred for him makes you think, maybe we'd be a good team. That's exactly what happened in World War II. The Soviets actually had a pinky swear, I won't invade you if you don't invade me, with guess who? Adolf Hitler. In the spring of 1941, he broke that promise, and he invaded the Soviet Union. Just like Napoleon, he got to the outskirts of Moscow. I'm simplifying here. The winter hit, his guys didn't have the clothing and material and supplies they needed, and they're going to slowly retreat and die all the way back to Berlin. So from the east, the Soviets are chasing the Nazis back to Germany. We land at Normandy in June 1944. We push there from the west. We meet up, and at first we're kind of chummy and friends, but here's the thing. That mutual enemy that made us friends before is dead. Your unified hatred of him is not going to keep your friendship going because you just took him out. He's Nazi Germany in this analogy. So now you look at him suspiciously and say, well, we were kind of friends out of necessity, but now I don't need you anymore. And you're big and scary and mean, and they think the same of you. And that's how this rivalry to be the hegemonic world power is going to start, that we call the Cold War. Okay? Go ahead to the next section. This is the last one that we're going to read in class. So this one, you're going to read however you would like as a group. Out loud, take turns, silently, as long as it's not in an Australian accent and doesn't involve beatboxing. I don't care how you read it. I know those are your two go-to methods. Okay, so decide as a group how you want to read section 2. Go ahead.